Dear chess friends, welcome to your out of chess channel and welcome to a spectacular and beautiful game from the round 4 of the Qatar Masters in 2023. So from this round we're following now a beautiful roller coaster between Pranesh and Magnus Carlsen. This game had really some ups and downs. It was really a crazy game, and we have to say this guy Pranesh is really an interesting person. He's a beautiful chess grandmaster from India and he's only 17 years old. He's part of course of this new wave that's going on now in the chess community, the new Indian wave. And although maybe he is not this top GM level, I don't know, like Arjun Edgaisi, Gukesh and Pragananda, still I kind of feel that this guy could play in the next couple of years really important role in the chess community, because he today played an awesome and brilliant game against the strongest player in the world, against Magnus Carlsen. So let's see now what happened. In my opinion, a really beautiful game. Pay good attention. It was, as I said, very spectacular roller coaster with many ups and downs. So with the white pieces, Pranesh opened with the move e4. We have g6 by Magnus Carlsen, d4 by Pranesh, d6. So far we have the modern defense. Knight to c3, preparing of course bishop to e3, queen to d2, maybe f3, g4, h4, launching the so-called 150 attack. So we have c6. Magnus goes here into a more flexible variation, goes into this accelerated Gurgenitzer line, in which he has the opportunity to hit the flanks immediately with the move b5. He doesn't want to expose his knight immediately. He's waiting maybe white to play the move h4, then he can block it out with h5. So he's delaying the situation on the king side in order to launch an early flank attack on the queen side, because many times, as we said, when bishop to e3, queen to d2 is played, then white is trying many times to castle queen side. So that's why with the move c6, Magnus wants to be already fast and attack this side of the board. So bishop to e3, knight to f6, and here Pranesh makes already the decision. He plays now the solid move f3. I myself, I'm a more fan of this lines with knight to f3, because the knight is supporting the progressive ideas with e5. If you get challenged, then you can even get out of this mess with queen to d2. If your opponent wants to double up your pawn structure, still you have a certain flexibility to play the afterwards. f4, queen side castling, bishop to e2, h4, h5 is still working. So in my opinion, this would be also an unpleasant game here for black. So after move knight to f6, as we said, f3 with the preparation to play the move g4. Magnus plays on his idea b5. Here Pranesh continues also with his plan g4, attacking the king side. So we have now really a beautiful opposite side attack game. Who is faster on the attack will probably have great chances in the continuation of the game. So we have now the move h5. Magnus is searching for a clarification immediately on this side of the board. Pranesh does it with the move g5. Magnus steps back, and now f4. Good move, making further progress in the center of the board. Now what the main concept is now knight to f3, and maybe hit the center even with the move e5. In the game, knight to b6 was played by Magnus Carlsen. Again, you have two good choices. A3 is, in my opinion, a good choice, because you're not allowing your opponent to expand on with the move b4, and also you're keeping here a little bit your bishop flexible on this side of the board. You're anticipating the move knight to c4. If that happens, we'll simply immediately pick up with the bishop the knight. The knight would be then too powerful to handle. We're basically trying to stay with our Dashko bishop on the board. But here Pranesh played also a very solid knight to f3, but after move b4 and knight to e2, the problem is now Magnus realized that there is this issue that the knight could come on c4. So very interesting also opening line here by Magnus. After move d5, Pranesh goes of course with the move e5. Now the issue is where to go with the light square bishop, because you obviously want to lock the pawn chain. You want to play e6 and then of course have a nice grip on light squares, but you first have to get out with your light square bishop. If you play bishop to f5, then you get challenged. If you try like this, then look, this bishop is staying, as I said, on this diagonal where it's waiting this knight to come on c4. So that's why Magnus immediately played bishop to g4. We have bishop to g2. Now after move e6, now Pranesh probably should have played again this move b3. Again, not allowing this really annoying knight on c4. But he played maybe a tiny little inaccuracy in the game h3. Magnus, of course, took bishop to f3, and now Magnus actually makes a mistake with the move knight to d7. Again, Magnus should have simply gone here to c4 and then occupy this main weakness. The bishop has to retreat. We have some weaknesses on b2. This knight will eventually come into the game, but now was, I think, the correct time here for Magnus Carlsen to play it, because if bishop to c1 happens, we can even break and enter here immediately with the move c5. But Magnus Carlsen Carlsen played on knight to d7. Pranesh simply continues with h4, bishop to e7, kingside castling, rook to c8, and now c3. Now Magnus gets through. Beautiful move. As I said, the bishop on f3 was simply deflected to the king side. The bishop never controlled anymore. Here the square c4. Now Magnus occupies it, and I think here black is already equal to white. Black has equalized the position in an early stage of the game, which is a good thing for when you play with the black pieces. White doesn't have so many chances. The position is blocked out enough. The position is static, which of course is favorable a little bit for the knight. So although the bishop here can explode maybe in the later stage of the game, still there have to be many moves in order to make some kind of activity here with the bishop here. So bishop to c1, you see you have to again retreat. We have b takes c3, b takes c3, rook to b8, king to h1, and now queen to a5 here by Magnus Carlsen. So here Pranesh continued with the move queen to d3. Magnus played now bishop to a3, attacking now the dark square bishop to e3, and now comes maybe even the first really huge positional inaccuracy, I would say, here by Magnus Carlsen. Magnus played now knight takes e3. What he did, basically, he gave up the most powerful piece for Pranesh's worst piece on the board, because the bishop on e3, I think, will not play so much in this game, being blocked out so much by your own pawns. Risky choice here by Magnus. Knight to e3. From this point on, I think black is getting back into the game. White is getting back into the game here. As I said, Magnus should have simply waited and played maybe more actively with the rook. Rook to b2. Also, knight to b2 was an option. Many great options here for black, but taking out this really bad bishop on e3 wasn't a good choice here by Magnus. But okay, after knight to e3, queen to e3, knight to b6, Magnus wanted to, of course, to again reload here around the square c4. He's trying, of course, to get this other knight now on this beautiful square. But here after rook to b1, Pranesh prevents this. And of course, if you play knight to c4 first, rook takes b8, then is the continuation. So that's why Magnus had now to play a strange move, king to d7, connecting the rooks, which is not, again, such a bad thing, because this position is so blocked out in the center of the board, so nothing will eventually happen in the center of the board. But now after move f5, Pranesh found the brilliant idea how to get out of this mess, how to at least activate the pieces somehow. This was the only move that white needs to play in order to stay in the game, because again, knight to c4 would happen, then the b file could be occupied, the queen is very active here, the pawn on c3 is weak, so f5 only move. Congratulations for Pranesh to find this move. Many of us would not even consider this kind of a move. f5 is now a brilliant choice, because look at this. After e takes f5, for instance, let's see first of all what happens if you play g takes f5. Then the problem is now we play queen to d3. You could maybe occupy, but now we take, and now you lose this pawn on h5. So this is not working. So that's why Magnus played the correct choice, e takes f5. But now Pranesh played another brilliant move, e6. This is the way to go. Sacrificing 2 pawns just in order to get the knight on a beautiful square. Now this one is weak. Now the g6 square is weak. What should you do? If you try rook from b to e8, then the issue is here knight takes g6. Then again, bishop to h5 is coming through, and this is, I think, not a good continuation anymore for black. Knight to e5 is going to happen. So devastating position. So after knight to f4, that's why rook to e8. We have bishop to e2, controlling now the c4 square. Bishop to d6, and now Pranesh takes out now also this pawn. This pawn is weak from this point on. Again, very dynamic position also here for white. Knight to c4, bishop to c4, d takes c4, knight to e5. What should you do? If you play bishop to e5, then we simply trade it off. The d file is opened. There is maybe the possibility of pushing this pawn on the g file. This one is weak. Although black is up a pawn, but these are double pawns, it's not so dangerous here on the queen side. Here, I think, on the king side, white would have a huge advantage. So, in the game, that's why after knight to e5, Magnus played king to c7, knight to f7, queen to d5, king to g1, and now f4. Queen to f2, rook takes b1, rook takes b1. Again, the engine loves now this position for white. Also playable now for black, because even in the worst scenario, I think this king, the white king, is also a little bit exposed, because you pushed your pawns in front of the king too much. But here, as I said, white should be slightly better, because still Pranesh recognized the possibility of a beautiful b file attack. So Here in the continuation, Rook to F8 was played by Magnus. Now comes the idea. Queen to B2. Here Pranesh leaves simply this knight unprotected. If you take now Rook to F7, then it's game over. Look at this. We deliver check. You have to cover, take, and now after Rook to F7, it would be game over. Magnus, of course, realized that, played now the solid move C5. The only move here, we have to say, this is now the only move to somehow survive this dangerous attack. We have now knight takes d6 by Pranesh, we have king takes d6, and now queen to a3. The correct choice here. The problem is now, of course, black cannot take the pawn on d4. This one is hanging, and Magnus here immediately didn't react correctly. Magnus make now huge blunder with queen to f5. This was now a brutal mistake that unfortunately we have to say Pranesh didn't punish here. Pranesh didn't punish. That sounds great. So here after move queen to a3, the only way to survive this maybe is to play rook to a8. Here rook to b2 can be played. We deliver a couple of checks, but now we have to step back in one moment. Now the queen is coming into the game. There are always some threats of perpetual checks. So although white has a great activity on the queen side, black has also some counter chances. As I said, the king is simply too exposed. Too many squares are here left in front of white's king, so it's not working. But instead of this move rook to a8, Magnus played now queen to f5, and here Pranesh had, I think, immediately the chance to destroy Magnus with the move queen to a6, and that's the move that he played. But now the follow-up was not so good. After queen to d5, queen to b7, we have another check, and now here after d takes c5, queen to c5, king to f1, we have queen to d5. Here Pranesh made, I think, a move that 99% players would play for sure. He played the move queen to b4 because obviously the king is lined up here like the rook on the dark squares, and here Pranesh, of course, is grabbing the rook. But a better choice is to play queen to a6. Look at this. This is really spectacular endgame study here. Then you have to play, if you play king to e5, then of course rook to b5 is winning the game. If you play king to d7, then we pick up here the pawn with the tempo. Now we can always deliver new checks. We can play queen to b6. So new possibilities are here, but at least you grab the pawn and you can always let this pawn roll. There is also this passer. So this position, I think, defensively would be too stretched for black to defend everything on both sides of the board. Still you have to struggle, still you have to battle, still your king is also exposed. But I think Pranesh could have played this line and this would be perfectly fine. But Pranesh played queen to b4, nothing wrong with this, but this, believe me or not, leads actually into an equal endgame. Really wild stuff. Here after king to e5 and rook to e1 that Pranesh played, we have king to f5. Now queen to f8, we have king to g4. For instance, if you try some ideas of queen to b8, I wanted to show you how really dangerous this position can also be for white. You're up a rook, but you can get destroyed. For instance, you try here to play queen to b8. Now we deliver check. And for instance, in one moment, if you don't react correctly with your king, you can get even checkmated. You can get even here some very too dangerous pass pawns. For instance, you try to step back, we deliver new checks. Now we deliver new check. We pick up here. We play also the move c3, attacking now the king. With we can play f3. The queen is coming into the game suddenly, so this could be very brutal position also for white, although you're up a whole rook. So that's why here after move king to g4, Pranesh played rook to e2. He's trying now to get a new defender into the game. Magnus plays now the correct move f3 here. What he's trying to do is, of course, to get the rook here on f2. If that happens, then queen to d1 is a beautiful checkmate. Look at this, really wild stuff. But after move f3, here Pranesh reacted in the correct way, played now the move queen to f6. He has to now give up the rook back. Really wild stuff. F takes e2, king to e2, and now Magnus delivered a check here with the move queen to e4. From this point on, I think the game again should be a draw. After queen to e4, here Pranesh went with king to f2. Now Magnus simply pushed the pawn on e5. Pranesh tried also to push the pawn on g6, but now after a couple of checks, here both players after the move queen to e4 decided for a draw. So, what to say? Almost again, Magnus Carlsen lost against a much lower rated opponent. Pranesh had here some great chances. He had this move that he missed he simply played queen to b4. The issue after queen to b4 here was that Pranesh had enough time on the clock. Magnus had actually around 1 minute on the clock. Pranesh had around 25 or 30 minutes still on the clock. he rushed here with the move Queen to B4. Maybe he should have taken more time calculating this in a deeper way, seeing maybe that there was the possibility, as I said, Queen to A6, then here delivered check, Rook to B5, for instance, was an option, King to D7, then we delivered this, we take out this pawn by delivering a check. That's not the most important thing. We can also, I think, bring the queen in the defense, so this was the way to go. Maybe forcing Magnus Carlsen to sweat for a little bit longer was now Pranesh's opportunity, but great game still. A draw against the strongest player in the world, also with 300 rating points less than Magnus. Really beautiful performance by the young chess prodigy. So, okay, I hope that you enjoyed this game. Really wild stuff. Magnus Carlsen got the draw with the hold down rook. Really crazy position. Rare case that we see such a beautiful endgame study. If you want to see some other great games that we have covered from this event, check out our commented chess games here on my YouTube chess channel. And if you want to see more, maybe even more brutal chess games, check out our common chess games played by computers with some more games by Stockfish, AlphaZero, and many more. And if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best, of course.